that besides the pandemic, the word infodemic has become very, very important.
Refugees are people like you and me. We want the same things you do. And we fall for the same misinformation as you.
I'm delighted to be back at the second year of this annual Deutsche Welle Akademie conference on communication, engagement, and accountability in crisis, and especially to moderate this panel, which is on cooperation between humanitarian and media development organizations.
What I'm feeling is that despite the devastation that is caused by this pandemic, we have a unique opportunity to really focus in on community engagement, and really less communication and more engagement.
For us, the work, especially in the space of innovation, is very much centered on co-designing solutions and not parachuting solutions. So you're spot on. Technology is a means to an end. It is not to be used for experimenting on anyone.
Now, 7 speakers will present their projects and ideas. It will be a trip around the world, from Germany to Malaysia to Uganda, Cameroon, and more.
Obviously, we all know that communication is a two-way road. It's not just about us giving messages to other people. People need to be able to listen and share information. It's a two-way conversation.
Gathering these insights is often time and money consuming, and let alone unsafe. In certain areas, it's even difficult and complicated to do your outreach because of safety regulations and access. But it doesn't have to be like this. And this is where your opinion comes in.
Haqiqa Wahid is an SMS misinformation management system, a project that also the Community Development Center is implementing in Rhynard-Geil.
Long story short, through the magnifying glass of coronavirus pandemic, now it's ever more clear that providing reliable information is a primary component of humane and dignified treatment of displaced communities. Plus, a new approach is urgently needed in the asylum system, in particular in refugee accommodations, to assure the well-being of the society as a whole.
The reason why we created this program really boils down to 3 different things. One, there are huge social differences between people in different corners of the world.
In our presentation today, we will attempt to answer the question, what challenges arise when implementing projects in a situation of conflict and good in another conflict.
Okay, so if you can hear me, I hope you can hear me. Now, just so we're all clear, as part of COVID-19 protective measures, the studio we've normally been using has been shut down for now, because everyone has to be protected. So we're going to be winging it. It's a digital conference after all, so we're going to be working or find a way around it. So don't mind all that you're seeing around me. I seem a bit all over the place with the stuff I have. We're going to make this work out. But with that said, hello and welcome to day 3 of DW Akademie's first virtual conference on communication and information in displacement settings. I am Eddie Micah Jr. As you can tell, I'm all smiles, a bit extra today because finally my co-moderator has joined us. Hello, Wanjiku.
Hi, Eddie. It is a pleasure to be here. My name is Wanjiku Mora, and we are your hosts for today and the upcoming days. Now, so far, It has been quite a trip. We've met so many experts on the topic, and yesterday particularly was a ride. 7 speeches from 7 different countries, each in 7 minutes. And if it is your first day at the conference, buckle up because the ride continues.
The ride definitely continues. We're not going to say if it's going to be a bumpy ride or a smooth ride. It depends on how technology goes. But yeah, picking it up from what Wanjiku said, in just a few minutes, we'll be joined by a team from Internews. That's a media development organization. They will talk about the topic rooted in trust, creating clarity about COVID-19 in humanitarian context. Okay, now they're waiting behind the scenes already, keen to talk to all of you and engage with you in conversation.
And you must be wondering, okay, how can I engage in this conversation? Well, if you've been with us over the last 2 days, you already know what comes next. To join our Q&A session with the experts, please register and download our conference app from the DW website. Once you're in, you can post your questions during the session, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible in the Q&A session later on. So go ahead and check it out.
Go ahead and check it out. Because yesterday, we didn't really have a chance for you guys to ask questions and get your answers. But today, as Wanjiku said, we're really going to make that time. So let's dive right into our next session. Since the 2004 tsunami in Southeast Asia, Internews has played a pioneering role in the field of humanitarian communications. They've been working closely with local media and aid agencies to ensure that people affected by disaster have access to timely and reliable information in languages they understand.
And that's why Internews has launched new projects in several countries to increase access to accurate, timely, and trusted information about COVID-19 while still combating mis- and disinformation.
That is definitely very important. So great work they're doing. But for the next 40 minutes, we're giving enough time to this team because it's a very strong team. We don't want to feel like we're cutting them. So we're going to give them 40 minutes. We'll hand over the mic to Meghann Rhynard-Geil, who is the Humanitarian Director of Internews. She'll introduce you to a panel of local partners to discuss lessons learned, success, and trends related to information sharing. Okay, now it's good to have you here, Meghann. Over to you.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. And I will go ahead and try to share my screen. It looks like the screen sharing is disabled at the moment, but we can just go ahead anyway. All right. Well, thank you so much for having us again. I just want to introduce myself, as you already did. I'm Meghann Rhynard-Geil. I'm the Humanitarian Director from Internews. I'm joined by Irene Scott, who's our Global Project Director for the Rooted in Trust program. And then we're also joined by several of our partners who are working with us on this program. So we've got Mikhaela Dimpas, who's a Program Manager for Media and Communications from the Initiative for Dialogue and Empowerment through Alternative Legal Services in the Philippines. We have Layal Bahnam, who's the Program Manager for Maharat Foundation in Lebanon. And we've got Julio Cesar Montaño, who's the Director of Tumaco Radio Station, part of Femenios in Colombia. So we're really excited to have all of them here to discuss kind of lessons learned and creative solutions that we've all come up with as we've been seeing one of the largest information challenges probably in recent history, while also seeing a decrease in our ability to go and speak to the people that we're trying to share information with. So how have we combated mis and disinformation in the time of remote COVID in reality? We focus specifically on outreach and also making sure that we're reaching the most vulnerable populations who may or may not be present on social media. So how do we make sure that we understand their information needs, the context that they're living in, and then provide accurate information that's useful and actionable for them? So Internews believes that information saves lives. The root of our strategy is really helping to build healthy information ecosystems within the community. And that's really looking at the localized information ecosystem in relation to the larger information ecosystem. So how can we make sure that vulnerable communities or marginalized communities still have a voice within the larger community that they live? Our humanitarian approach includes community engagement, so really focusing on two-way communications, building bridges between stakeholders within communities to make sure that voices of marginalized groups are heard and recognized. We also focus on rumor tracking, so identifying and understanding what types of rumors and mis and disinformation are being spread within a community can also help us understand community dynamics and needs. And Irene will get into that in a bit more in a slide or two, or a couple minutes. We also really focus on accountability. So Internews can act as a third-party objective observer as we're seeing challenges within communities. So we can help, again, as we're bridging gaps between the health and humanitarian actors and other stakeholders within a community. We can help to identify needs and challenges that are arising as well within a response. So for COVID response specifically, the Internews humanitarian team and our partners have been responding in over 7 countries. Irene is going to speak in a second about the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance supported program Rooted in Trust. We've served over 4 million people in probably the last 6 months. And we are really focusing on both local and global stakeholder engagement. So how can we take lessons learned at the local level, ladder them up to the global level, and help all of our health and humanitarian partners learn from what we're doing. So with that, Irene, I will hand over to you to dive more into Rooted in Trust.
Great, yeah, thanks Meghann. Hi, Irene, I'm the Global Project Director for Rooted in Trust. It's a new project that Internews is rolling out at the moment in 7 different countries around the world. We'll be operating in Afghanistan, Lebanon, Philippines, Central African Republic, Mali, Colombia, and Sudan. And the countries where we're working are really the intersection of COVID and a humanitarian crisis. You know, COVID is a communication challenge enough, and it's a stress on a local population enough. But the countries where we're working are also combating economic crisis, displacement in populations, conflict, instability, natural disasters, and other political crises. So what we really want to do is in these environments is really to listen to the community for the rumors and misinformation. The way that Internews uses rumors in our work is we really see rumors as an insight into the community consciousness. They identify information gaps, of course. You know, of course, they show where the community might need more factual information. But I think rumors are also a really great display of community trust or mistrust that might be in perhaps information or in health or humanitarian services. Rumors are really great insight into community fears and anxieties as well. And there's a lot of that going on in this crisis, of course, but they also can point towards hope. And you see a lot of rumors circulating in communities that are fueled by a hope for a vaccine or a hope for this crisis to end as well. In the populations where we're working with humanitarian and health partners. And the idea there is that we take the rumor data, the listening that we do to the community, we not do to them, do with the community. We analyze that information and we use that to help humanitarian and health partners communicate more effectively. So to help them to understand the environment in which this rumor is circulating, and not only to be able to replace that rumor with fact, but to be able to address the environment that has allowed that rumor to spread quicker than perhaps it would have. We're also working with local media as trusted sources of information in the environments where we're working. And that translates to training, of course, training in health and science journalism, in the creation of demand-driven content. So content that is driven by the information needs that we identify from the community by listening to the community, rather than content that is driven purely by an editorial meeting or a top-down approach. And by building, of course, peer-to-peer systems for journalists to support each other in this crisis. You know, I think every aspect of our communities is being stretched by the pandemic, and especially for journalists. A lot of them are now expected to be experts in health and science journalism, which is a very complex area to be a reporter in. So what we're trying to do is to really support them by, of course, giving them that training, but also helping to translate some of that really quality verified health and scientific information into local languages. As Meghann mentioned, we're looking at a global and a local response. So we're really looking at taking the latest guidance on risk communication at that global level and translating it into the context where we're working. And then, of course, also taking the learning that we're having in our country contexts and sharing that among the project, among the organization, and contributing to the discussion at those regional and global forums. You know, the WHO reported in February that, of course, you know, COVID-19 was an infodemic. And what they meant by that was that there was just too much information for the community to synthesize, too much information for people to sort fact from fiction. And as I said before, you know, that challenge is also for journalists. It's really hard for them to access the facts they need to do quality reporting in their local languages. And that's meaning that for a lot of journalists, they're relying on secondary reporting on someone else's reporting. And those practices, of course, you know, open up gaps where misinformation or mistakes can happen that lead to misinformation. I think in this crisis, we've seen that we've tried facts. We've tried replacing these rumors with people. And that's great. That's a wonderful first step. What we're trying to do with Rooted in Trust is to understand that people will not accept factual information unless it comes from a trusted source and unless it fits their reality. So what we're trying to do is to understand the information gap that exists, but also that environment that has fueled the spread of that rumor. There's a few ways that we do that and ways that we try and respond to the rumors in this project as well. We try and understand our community. That's always a great first step with any kind of project that you're doing, especially in a humanitarian environment, but really any environment. We want to try and understand how and where they access information, who they trust, how they like to share information. And of course, within that community, you know, young people, old people, different vulnerable groups might choose to access information differently. We want to try and understand how that information is flowing through the community. We want to listen to the community's actual questions and concerns and not assume that we can guess what they might be. We want to listen to their actual questions and concerns. And we want to make sure that we're providing localized advice that's in preferred languages and advice that really fits the person's reality. So it's not, again, not a top-down, very general piece of prevention advice, that it's advice that fits the reality of the person receiving that information. So for example, if we're asking someone or advising someone to wear a face mask, we want to make sure they're in an environment where it is possible to buy face masks. And if it's not, if they're in an environment where they're not available, to make sure we give other options, you know, to give actionable information that actually fits their reality. We call that the reality check before we share the information. We want to acknowledge people's fear. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of fear in many communities around this pandemic for a lot of really good reasons. And we want to remember that, you know, most of the misinformation that's being shared in this pandemic does come from that place of fear, of people feeling generally unstable in their life, in their community, and unsure of their future. So it's really important in those situations as well to listen to the community, to acknowledge that fear, and to try and respond to those actual questions, and to not to dismiss rumors as you know, ridiculous or silly or questions that we think we know the answer to. It's really important to acknowledge that we understand people and that we are actually here to continue listening. We want to, on that note, of course, make sure any information we give is actionable information. By actionable, we mean information that gives people something they can do in their reality to protect themselves, their friends, their family, and something that helps them feel less hopeless in this really challenging situation. Another key thing that we're trying to do with this project, of course, is also to report with marginalized groups. There's a lot of reporting that happens in this crisis on marginalized groups, so reporting about the groups and about their situation and their challenges, and that's wonderful and really important. We want to make sure we're also making sure there is a space to elevate the voices of those marginalized groups and to really understand what their information needs are, because quite often you find they might be different to other sectors of the community. And of course, the most important thing is to keep listening and responding. That's something really key to our process, is that we're not taking one snapshot of the community's perspectives or of the community's questions. We want to be open to continue listening and responding, because any piece of information we give, no matter how well we think we've thought it through or no matter how wonderfully crafted it is, there will always be follow-up questions and there will always be more questions to answer. And it's by continuing to listen and to respond to those questions that we start to build trust with the community. So I'll hand back to you, Meghann, for the next part of the presentation. Not sure if we can get the slides going yet.
Let's see if we can. Nope, not yet. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and hear from our partners. Basically, introductions from each of our partners, hearing about what the work they're doing is in each country, in each context, and then we dive into a series of questions, and then we'll hear a Q&A from the participants. So Layal, would you go ahead? Oh, sorry, Irene.
No, go for it. That's fine.
Cool. Layal, please go ahead and introduce yourself and your program.
Yes, my name is Layal Bahnam. I'm the program manager at Maharat Foundation. So Maharat is a Beirut-based organization working on media development and freedom of expression in Lebanon and in the MENA region. So we've been doing a lot of studies in the past related to the whole media ecosystem and studying like how different communities access information, etc. But in this project particularly, it's really an approach, like Irene said, it's like listening and responding accordingly. So we're like through this program, we're trying a new approach also for us. So it's not just like picking up the rumors that we see on social media and then just fact checking them and addressing them and putting them there. So it's a different approach in order to try to engage with communities and feed them back with the information and to regain trust in the whole ecosystem. So I will speak later about like the whole intervention. Maybe now we're just introducing ourselves. So I'll speak later in details.
Great.
Great, no worries. I'll hand it over to Mikhaela, who is in Philippines. Tell me a little bit about Ideals and what you're doing to respond to COVID.
Hi, I'm Mikhaela, Program Manager for Media and Communications of Ideals. So we are based in the Philippines and have several interventions all around the country. We are a legal-focused organization, but aside from the provision of legal services, we believe that information is an often overlooked aid in conflict, disaster, and even right now in pandemic situations. So we kind of do that too. So our Information as Aid project, which is being supported by Internews, is largely based in Mindanao. So just for context, communities in Mindanao experience continuous armed conflicts, bouts of displacement, poverty, and now they are being greatly affected by the pandemic. So I'll talk about the project also later on. Thank you.
And in Colombia, we're working in the south of the country in a region called Nariño. And so I'll hand over to Julio. So Julio, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what your organization is doing.
Well, thank you so much. I wait in this moment. I am in company with Marta Arboleda. She is the executive director of CADE, is the main organization to the tobacco stereo station. Our organization focuses on to teach folk culture and communication. We have two ways: is cultural expression, and we're using the tobacco stereo, our radio station. We believe the communication and culture is the strategy to teach and communicate to the people. Our organization is in Tumaco, Nariño, Colombia, in Pacific Coast. We're working with Afro-Colombian community. The other thing is for us in Tumaco, when talking about the pandemic of the COVID-19 is big surprise, because the public service in our country is we have a lot of problems. We have to reinvent to create different situations for make some solution for this problem. For this reason, in our organization, so the radio station has to create a special program, and the name is Infect with the Dance and Not the COVID. What is how to explain about that?
Okay, thank you so much for invite to let you know about our experience in Tumaco. Through the radio station and our cultural organization, we try to provide reliable information to the community because we start facing many myths that the community start like, for example, COVID-19 virus cannot spread in hot and humid climates. It's like, this is real. We have to care of this because even though we are in the hot weather all the time, we have to be careful with this. We also, Black people don't get COVID. We are Black. We can get infected. We start working from that part. It's like, let us get the reliable information to the community that we need to care, we need to follow, and we need to continue following the protocol for caring of the COVID. And then our radio station, we create a program, Contágiate de la danza, not the COVID. Be contagious of the dance, not the COVID. Because we use our key, our tool of dance, of acting, of play games with children, with young people, because this is our root, and we use that to let the people know we can use this to recreate this new situation. The program has like we care of the mental health of the people. We work with artists, with poets, trying to use the lyric to let the people be careful. We have to care of this because we have to protect each other. If you protect yourself, you protect me, and you protect the community. That it was the everyday message. If you protect yourself, you protect your family, you protect your town, you protect your country. It's like,
yeah.
Also, we as an organization, we have to recreate our own work, our program. We have to start learning how to be virtually. We have to also we have to deal with internet in our town. Like how we can let the community be informed. Use the radio station, use the program, use the artists, talk with the community, go to the community, but do not forget, be away from people, 6 feet, and wear your mask, and use your glass, bring your hand sanitizer, but don't leave the community. Be there. We used to start being in the community. We also provide food for the community because we are in a small town. The people live from day by day situation. This is another thing that made hard for us. It's like we cannot be in the home all the time. We have to go to fish.
And I think
for our people.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you made there, that you need to be part of the community, but also, you know, it's quite challenging in these times where we're, especially for artistic expression, we're used to being together with people, dancing with people, you know, up in each other's faces, which is obviously something that can't happen during the pandemic. So yeah, really interesting to see how you've modified your programming to make sure you can still use radio and provide that entertainment, but also that education at the same time. I wanted to ask you, Layal, working in Lebanon, it's clearly a country at the moment that is facing multiple challenges. Of course, there's an economic crisis. There was the blast that also happened in August. There's quite a large refugee population there. I'm really interested to know how your organization is managing, I guess, the multiple different information priorities that your community will have at the moment. COVID is not going to be the only thing they're thinking about.
Yes, exactly. You are right. So in Lebanon, like you said, there are too many challenges. So it's not COVID-19. COVID-19 came to add to other challenges. So we have like all the corruption and the protests that started in October and stopped after that with the COVID-19, the resignation of two governments, and now we don't have any government, the depreciation of the local currency, etc. So we have like big problems, and then the explosion. We have very big challenges, and all that within lack of trust. So there's no trust in public institutions, and this is a major challenge when we talk about accuracy of information and also access to information. So the public communication of the public administrations is absent because there is this gap in trust between citizens and between the government. And as you said as well, there's the refugees in Lebanon, both Syrians and Palestinians, that are not acknowledged in anything by the government when it comes to information. So even if we want to talk not about only the COVID, let's say the explosion that happened. So the explosion in 4 August, till now, no one has any information, neither about the aids, the transparency, the food that is in the port, how much it's still like, how much it was impacted by the explosion, by the nitrate, etc. So we don't have information in all the feeds, and this is like reflected as well when we talk about COVID-19. So despite that, the Minister of Information was trying like to disseminate information related to COVID-19, but you have all the time like people not believing because they do not trust these public administrations. So if they were talking about the number of deaths, people would say, no, it's not true. They want to take more money. This is why they are increasing the number of people who are dying. A lot of examples. So that lead us to like, there's like a gap between the public institutions and the citizens, including the most vulnerable, that are refugees, both Syrian and Palestinians, and also Lebanese people, because now with the economic situation and the deterioration, like more than 60% of the Lebanese are now from the poor population. So this adds as well to ongoing crisis related to media itself. So the media institutions were also contributing somewhere in spreading misinformation. So we have also issues with traditional media because they are affiliated. Also, they are within the same political affiliation and like a reflection of the political system. So it's not, also trust is not built towards media institutions themselves, and this is another layer of the challenges. And when it comes to independent media platforms as well, so they are struggling with viability, and this is also something that we've been working a lot at Maharat, in partnership as well with the Akademie, who's hosting this panel. So we've been working and studying how like opportunities can be given to more viable independent platforms that can play this role in regaining trust in the media content, because this is a huge issue when we talk about citizens that are informed, especially the vulnerable communities, where the more rumors are circulating mainly not only on social media but unfortunately in closed WhatsApp groups. So and this is also a major challenge for all the organizations and media institutions who want to work on countering misinformation and responding to misinformation. So this is why I said that this approach that we are using with Internews is a very like is a new approach actually for us, because it's listening from the communities and feeding back into their communication, so that it will have some impact either on the communities that are sharing rumors and misinformation, and also on international organizations and the journalists, by listening as well to their needs rather than implying some kinds of trainings that maybe they won't need. So all the approach is like based on listening to different communities contributing in this information circle, if you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You know, it's really challenging in an environment where quite often you would assume the government is your trusted information source. You would assume that there is a level of trust in the media. And when the media has no one to go to for their verified information and the community has no one to go to for their verified information, they are reliant on friends, family, social media, and information that might not be verified and might not be the quality that is going to help them in a crisis. So yeah, thank you for giving an insight into the media ecosystem and the information ecosystem there in Lebanon. I think it's really complex at the moment, and I very much appreciate that we have you on board as our partner to help work with some of these challenges. I wanted to jump over in my imaginary plane over to the Philippines now, and to have a chat to Kayla from Ideals. As you were saying before, you're working with communities there that have been affected by crisis in the past, and also communities that are sometimes quite isolated in where they are. I'm interested to hear a little bit more about how you adapted to COVID, and specifically around some of the wonderful radio programming that you've been doing both on air but also through social media.
So I guess aside from the need to procure a lot of personal protective equipment for our local community patrollers, our programming has changed in terms that there is a shift in the information and themes that we needed to highlight and how to get and actually relay those to our community partners. So pre-COVID, Mindanao communities already have difficulties in accessing basic needs, having a livelihood. And with COVID right now, they need to ensure that their families are safe from the virus on top of everything else that they've been experiencing for so long. So this has affected their priorities. And ensuring whether the information that they got is accurate or not, or if a rumor is harmful or not, is not anymore part of their daily priorities because they have mouths to feed. And our role really is to respond to these challenges and treat them as opportunities in our programming. So the best way that we did that is actually by tapping local capacities to be as non-intrusive as possible and to represent community interests by bridging dialogues between communities and duty bearers. So first, we tapped local community patrollers to gather information on the ground. They hold listening sessions, consultations with other community members on community-based rumors or pertinent disinformation that we may not be able to gather online. And then from those consultations, we also capacitate them to become champions who the people can actually ask if an information is true or not. I think this is a really important facet of our strategy because of the huge language barrier in Manila, in the provinces, and even in those provinces, there is a huge language barrier. And then the fact that there is intermittent cellular signal, electricity, people there have no smartphones or access to internet. So our local community patrollers, they feed us with the information, and together we actually produce materials that are responsive to the context and to their needs, and then they bring it back to their communities. They're somewhat like Google, but they're on the ground and real, and they are actually real people who the communities trust. So those are the things for our community patrollers, but of course we need to reach a wider audience as well. So we use our radio programs, which has been airing for over 3 years now, and it started actually in 2017 during the Marawi siege, which is the longest urban conflict in the history of the Philippines. So we air those radio programs through targeted public address systems and stream to social media because, of course, in situations like this, we need to use as many platforms as possible to reach as many people as possible. But of course, our productions, our materials must be responsive to the context and are actually based on a needs assessment by community patrollers and locals as well.
Yeah, I think that's really Really fascinating, Kayla. Thank you so much for giving us that background. And for those of you that haven't seen their programming, you know, we'd love to be able to share a link to some of the social media programming that has happened. It's happening in local languages, and I think that's a really important point to make there, because obviously a lot of countries do have a lingua franca. They have, you know, the most common language that people speak, but especially when we're talking about a health crisis, people need to be able to speak in the language they're most comfortable expressing themselves in. That's where they're able to, of course, express themselves most clearly, where they're able to understand information more clearly. And in a health crisis where we're dealing with very complex scientific information which is updating sometimes on a daily basis, I think it's really crucial to be able to communicate in local languages that people prefer, so that more people, of course, can access that quality information. Kayla, could you give us a little background as well in the languages that you're using for the programming, and why those languages were chosen?
So in our programs, the local languages are chosen because, for example, in Lanao del Sur, in Maranao is a spoken language, really. So they have no official written language, and people there do not know are not well versed in English, or not well versed in other bigger, more common languages. So we use that so they can actually express themselves. And even in Maguindanao, those are the languages that are commonly used by the elders, the vulnerable and marginalized communities that we want to target. So yeah, we use those local languages.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, because when we talk about there being an infodemic as well, I think, you know, all of us would have experienced in the context where we're working, when we take information from one language and we transfer it to another, there is that possibility of misinterpreting information, and for changes to be made not intentionally at all, that then lead to rumors. So being able to have that quality information in someone's original language is really key. Julio, I wanted to throw another question to you before we open it up to the floor and see what our wonderful participants in this section would like to know from you all. But while I still have the mic, I would love to know a little bit more about the radio programming that you're doing at the moment. And of course, the area where you're operating, where Tumaco is, also has a high number of Venezuelan migrants as well. So how do you make sure that you adapt to the information needs of the migrant population and the other various populations that also live in Tumaco?
I think
coming
Julio,
off
you're still
mute.
on mute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tumaco is the small hometown close to Ecuador. Forever, the migrant came to Ecuador. But the other thing, Tumaco have the population, the Tumaco population is like 138 because it's small. But right now, we have the big problem because the immigrant came to Venezuela. In this case, we create another program with the Internews to try to make more visible these people and to close to the myth, because a lot of people say the Venezuelan population came to Colombia and made a big social problem. For this reason, with Internews, we create a different program.
Also, just to put a little more things there. As organization, as a Tumaco organization, we have to make a partnership with different others organizations that work for the community, and like I say, real organization that trust the information we gave them. Sorry, we made a partnership with Internews and Sindamanoy organization. It's like you work in global level, that we can say Internews. We go the city by city. We work with Sintamanoy, and Tumaco work with the little town. It's like we can work with the whole community, involving because at that time, before the pandemic, we got a lot of Venezuelan immigrants. And we cannot leave them outside of the community, because even though they are from over there, now they are part of our community. We have to work with them too. We have to bring information. Also, some of them are not home, how the people in the street can protect from the COVID-19. Because it's like I say, if you protect yourself, you protect me, and you protect the community, and they are part of the community. That's why we start making partnership with other organizations to deal with the whole community. Now we move our town. No, you are part of us. Now we have to care of you too. That's we deal with this situation. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think what's really interesting with some of the work that we'll be doing with the organizations that we have in Colombia is working with migrant liaison officers who are, of course, migrants from that community, who will be able to talk to us about the questions and the concerns that the migrant population has about COVID-19. And also at the same time is training them to create their own content. So again, they're creating content that directly addresses their questions and concerns for their community and is made by them as well, which comes with that additional level of trust. It's by them and for them. I wanted to hand it back to Meghann. I've been hogging the mic. Meghann, did you want to jump in at this stage?
Sure. I mean, just to say thank you to our partners. And I think this just really highlights the need to have those relationships on the ground with local communities. And as you were just discussing in Colombia, like getting down to every micro community and creating partners within each of those so that there's representation across as many groups as possible when we're thinking about an information response and when we're thinking about communicating with communities, that we actually are being inclusive when we say that. So yeah, with that, I will hand back to the moderators and we can start to get some questions from participants.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Meghann and Irene, for leading that insightful discussion on how to increase access to accurate and timely information for refugees and migrants. And my takeaway, I have many, but some of my takeaways have been that in a health crisis, local languages, especially the spoken languages, need to be integrated, and also using real people who are part of the community builds trust. I hope the viewers also have gotten to enjoy that. Eddie, I'm sure you also have something that you've taken from this discussion.
Oh, I have many takeaways, Wanjiku, and first of all, many thanks to you guys. If you've really said a lot, there's just so much you guys are doing on the ground. Wanjiku, one of the key takeaways is for me the mental part of this, because we're treating corona very physically in most situations, wash your hands, do this and all, but there's a lot of people that have been mentally affected by this, and one of you guys, or some of you guys, mentioned that. So when we have the time, I would like to really delve into what's the best way to deal with people that are going through such mental situations. But Wanjiku, like you said, we really want to involve the people, or the participants I should say, that have been in this, so maybe we should get to that straight away.
That's right. If you haven't done so already, please use the Q&A section right next to the live stream to post your question.
Yep.
So Eddie, you want to get us started on some of the questions that we've already received so far?
I can definitely do that. Let's start with one from, he called himself Muti. Muti bin Saud is asking Layla this question, but I'm sure anyone else can pick up after Layla. The question is, Layla, how do you get people to trust independent media channels in politically charged countries like Lebanon? What are ways that worked and ways that did not?
Yes, so it's a very good question. Actually, it's very challenging, and even because we have at Maharat we have a fact-checking website as well. So, and it's very challenging in countries that are this much divided. Even you cannot rely on the opinion of an expert to say that this is an evidence-based information. So you have to do a lot of research in order to find factual and evidence-based information. And there's additional challenges related to lack of access to information. So even though we have an access to information law, but public administrations are not cooperating with providing information. So whenever you want to access data, you cannot, they will tell you it's within the exceptions, or they will not provide you with this data. So it's very challenging for independent platforms to be independent actually, and to be based on facts and evidence-based information, with the lack of data and with this division affecting as well experts. So it's a hard work, but at least like we have some criteria that we try to follow when we talk about independent journalism. So not being affiliated, trying to provide evidence-based information. So you have to have a real knowledge of the ground and the context in order to do this assessment, so that you say these are independent platforms trying to provide like more in-depth journalism, because unfortunately the mainstream media, we don't find in-depth journalism. So we do a lot of media monitoring studies for the traditional media, and one of the main findings, the lack of in-depth reporting. So it's only news and statements of politicians. So one of the criteria to say that this platform is independent or not, so looking at the content, whether it's quality journalism, providing in-depth content that is based on evidence and data. But it is not easy.
Thank you so much, Layal. Meghann, you want to jump in on that as well?
Yeah, I would just add as well that understanding kind of what the dynamics are that are creating the lack of trust in independent journalism or in other institutions that are sharing information is really important, because then you can cater how you're sharing that information to different types of groups that kind of address those root causes of lack of trust. So, you know, you can't just provide good information. You also have to be understanding what the dynamics are in which you are presenting that information.
Thank you so much. Still on the questions, this one is from Barnabas Samuel, who asks, beside community patrollers, what other ways and tools did you use to track rumors? How do people share with you rumors or misinformation they have in the communities, or channels that you use for giving back community feedback? I think this goes directly to Mikhaela first, who talked about the community patrollers, and then everyone else is obviously open to jump in. Mikhaela, please.
Okay, so aside from directly tapping community patrollers, we also held some sort of coffee session with the traditional, religious, and even youth leaders. And then we held very informal sessions, just talking, because we, in our communities, they somehow have a fatigue on surveys, on important official things like that. So what we did really is tapping those people who are already ingrained in the community, and then being as informal as possible while introducing what we are doing, so which is tracking rumors. So aside from face-to-face interactions, we also opened up all possible platforms. So we have a hotline, so people can text in their concerns or any disinformation that they have come across. And then our social media, our Facebook pages, our messenger is also open. And then even during the radio program, it's streamed live on Facebook, so people can actually send in their questions real time, and then we can debunk or combat any misinformation, rumors, or disinformation real time as well. So yeah, really it's about opening up every possible platform for people to have access to countering these kinds of information trends.
Would anyone, thank you so much, Mikhaela. Would anyone like to jump in also on that response?
I would love to jump in. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, definitely adding to what Kayla has said, I 100% agree. It's about using a number of different channels. You know, while social media is definitely a breeding ground, it's the nursery, perhaps for some rumors. It's a place where rumors go to spread very quickly like wildfire, and to move from social media to the community. It's not the be all and end all. And only listening to social media does mean that you're always missing a sector of the community. Everywhere in the world, even if it's a country that has really high access to social media and really high use of social media, there are always groups in the community that will not be using it. And by only collecting rumors from social media, we're excluding them from the conversation, and we're saying that we don't want to listen to their opinion. So I think what's been really important for us in the Rooted in Trust project in the 7 countries where we're working is using multiple streams. So trying to, again, understand how the community communicates. If it is social media, looking at, of course, the public posts that are available, Twitter, some of the public Facebook pages, but also talking to the community and saying, where do you have these discussions? Are there groups, if perhaps, you know, in some of the locations, there are particular groups that refugees choose to use to have these discussions rather on public forums? Where else can we go to listen to you? It's also about working with local media, perhaps through talkback radio, about the kind of calls and questions that they're getting from the community, face-to-face sessions, as Kayla said as well, and really working with the community to communicate in the way and collect the information the way that the community chooses to communicate. So starting with understanding the community is always really important for getting a thorough picture of the rumors that might be circulating.
Speaking of communities, Adi, I believe we have another question from our Q&A session.
Yeah, we do. You know, at this stage, Wanjiku, I'm really itching to ask about a billion questions that I have, but we don't have too much time to get into that. This is another one from Muti Binsad, who says, hi, Mikhaela. How do you pick these? Have we not done that already? How do we pick these communication patrollers? If we've not tackled that, then maybe you can mention something on that.
So the community patrollers that we've tapped are mostly part of the youth sector, because they are not only digital natives, but there is also a growing body of youth in the area that wants to actually create social change, wants to volunteer. So aside from, of course, the age factor, we want community patrollers who are already active in their communities. So most of them are already part of the youth council or are part of other organizations. And we also put prime in tapping those who have a media background. So these are senior high school students or college students who are in university and who are currently studying media, because they also produce media productions aside from, you know, listening to the community. So yeah, so we just want young, active, and those who really want to combat these rumors because they see the need for it in their communities.
Okay, that's great.
And
So, Wanjiku, I know
add,
you also... Oh, sorry. Meghann,
I would
very
just
briefly
add
from
one.
you.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we also really think about is having a diversity of community patrollers. So if you want to be hearing from an elderly group, you want to have somebody that they're comfortable with speaking with them and kind of representing them. So people should be representing themselves. So you want to have a very diverse representation of groups within those community controllers, so you're getting as wide a range of information needs and opinions as possible.
Okay, that's great. Wanjiku, I know you and I have quick questions. You want to go first?
Yes, thank you very much, Eddie. Actually, my question is to Julio, because you talked a lot about how you're engaging artists of different forms, dance, poetry, and so on, in talking about and debunking the myths around COVID. And I just was wondering, what are some of the challenges that you have experienced working with artists in the current pandemic we are all going through? Perhaps you could tell us briefly. I know Eddie is also waiting to ask his question, but and how you overcome these challenges. Thank you.
Okay. We have a debate who is going to talk.
You guys are like a tag team.
Okay, we have a lot of challenges, especially like I said before, we don't have the reliable internet, we don't have the good systems to communicate with people. We have to take a risk, going to the community, like following the COVID precaution, but it was challenging for us because at this time, people scary. People is not at the street. Another people is not scary because they has to work for food. Um, but it was very challenging especially for the radio station, because we are now a big station and we need to provide real information to the people. That's why we decide why our beat like tool, like weapon, like it's the dance. How we can talk with our own rule, our heart, our soul. We have to use our soul, because when you introduce for your veins and navigate with the thing, you feel like the music. Let the artists talk about how they are dealing with, how they are existing in this pandemic, because it was hard, super hard.
Yeah, we involve the poet, we involve the musician, we involve the dancer, because when the people talking is like singing, when the people walking is like dancing. But we use the old language, traditional language. One is through the music, the musician create the song, and with the beats involve the message to say, okay, come on, don't stay home, follow the all precaution. The other thing is like to painting, the people to paint, create some image to explain that. And the other is the dance. The dancer dancing with the music, really like this. Yeah. And the other is the lyric for the song. And this song saying, okay, stay home, don't go out, follow the rule like this, watching you hang, everything.
Wow.
And the is go to talking face by face to the people, because especially the old person, the adult person, don't want to listen. Yeah, because I don't have the phone, the iPhone.
So you are struggling to compete with technology and passing on a message. Thank you so much. I wish we had even more time to continue with this, just exploring the different types of languages we can use to communicate. But Eddie, you also had a question.
Yes, I also do. And you're right, we wish we had 5 hours to discuss all of this. The thing is, the first 2 days, Wanjiku, we finished a bit earlier. I mean, yesterday we finished 10 minutes to time. So I don't know about the organizers, if they will give us maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes maybe, because my question is about mental health, right? I've already mentioned it a bit. We normally focus on how not to get the coronavirus and how to protect yourself from others and all of that, very physical, practical things. But for those that have had to stay at home due to lockdowns, those that have very little or no human interactions from all of this lockdown, it has its toll on them mentally. First of all, how easy is it to address this, and how do you really go about this briefly? Anyone can jump on this in this case.
We can jump.
Yeah, so I guess I would say that our project isn't a mental health program, but what I would say is that it's really important in the way that we're responding, and that's part of us making sure that any information that we're providing is actionable, and that really does start to combat a little bit of the hopelessness that people can feel. Being at home, alone, separated from their community, from their friends and their family is very isolating. But if you can give people things that they can do to contribute to their own recovery, that's a very small thing that information can do to help to combat some of the mental health challenges. I think one of the other things we wanted to mention as well is that, media is also a big part of this project. And for the journalists that have been reporting on this crisis, especially in the environments where we're working, where they're not only reporting on COVID, they're dealing with the health and safety issues of the fear of being infected themselves and the risks that they might be facing in doing their normal everyday work, that it's really important to acknowledge, I guess, the mental health pressure that's also on the journalists that are trying to report on this crisis and on the many other crises that are affecting them in their countries. And that, additional vicarious trauma that does add pressure on them while they're trying to do their work. So it's crucial. Mental health is a challenge, I think, for everyone in this crisis, for the first responders and for people who are at home, trying to protect themselves and their friends and their family.
Eddie, there's nothing else I could ask for more other than time, obviously. But that is a lovely note to end on, because I feel like we've captured both the physical part with dance and, bodily expression, but also understanding that the information that we are disseminating as key players or stakeholders in this particular topic is important. It's important to also keep in mind the mental well-being of the people who are consuming the information. Thank you so much.
Not to cut you even, but I think one key thing that I think we're all taking away from this is as you and I as journalists, right? The kind of information that we keep putting out there. It has been so much depressing news during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think where we can come in is also try to do so many different things just to keep people's minds at ease still, while letting them do the right things to prevent it from spreading.
Definitely. I'm very sorry, I have to cut us short because time is tight. Yeah. However, I have some good news, even though I'm cutting it short here. On the conference app, we can carry on this discussion because it's clear that there is still a lot more that we can say, that we can share, and we have had questions from our viewers as well. So please, if you're watching and want to get in touch with our experts, please go to the conference app, leave your questions, let us keep discussing. I want to say a very heartfelt thank you to everyone that has joined us, especially our panelists. I have to say, we have people who are at 9:35 p.m. in the night. We have others on our panelists who are at 8 a.m. So we're scattered across the world. And we thank you so much for making the time for us. We thank also everyone who has asked any questions from our app. And what else can we say? Eddie, what can we expect tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow is going to be another mega day. We'll talk about women's leadership in crisis communication. This session will feature two presentations. One will take us to Liberia. Action Aid Liberia's head of programs, Patience Lanford, will speak about the COVID-19 response over there, in particular around women's leadership.
And the second session will be brought to us by Tribal News Network and highlight the stories of Mamar Afridi and Razia Masood, who are among the first professional female journalists from the Khyber Tribal District and Pakistan's Waziristan region. Both women were internally displaced before becoming voices of their communities.
Now, you have more than enough reason to join us tomorrow. And all of you guys I'm watching right now today, you should also join tomorrow's discussions because it's going to be very great. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I am Eddie Micah Jr.
And my name is Wanji Komora. Catch you on day 4, same place, same time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.